everyone, I'm your host, Robbie Strazynski. Thanks so much for joining us on episode number 75 of CardsChat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. Poker's full of a lot of great success stories, but today's guest is one of the most unique and best of them. He's one of the most brilliant, witty, and beloved members of the poker community who you may have originally seen on Daniel Negreanu's vlog or perhaps on Veronica Brill's YouTube show. Most recently, you may have seen him introducing Veronica Brill before she received the 2021 Global Poker Award for Charitable Initiative of the Year. This man's story of poker success comes not just from his winnings at the tables or with his creation of a great poker training tool, but also from his ability to inspire and bring positivity to the poker world like few people can. K.L. Cleeton, welcome, sir, to the CardsChat podcast.
Wow, Robbie, I'm going to have to, well, thank you, first of all, and I'm going to need to know your daily rate so I can just have you follow me around and just say that, whenever I enter a room, just, anytime. Ladies and gentlemen, that was one of the kindest and warmest welcomes I've ever gotten. So thank you very much.
A very well-deserved welcome. How you doing today, Clayton?
I'm really good. We're surviving the apocalypse.
So yes, indeed.
That's all that matters. No, having a great time. Trying to be out here, building and improving on this game that we all love, and
that's it.
Hopefully people are finding it valuable.
Cool. So just so I'm always curious when people use abbreviations. KL. I think it's because you said your dad's Ken, so you're Kenneth, right?
Yeah. So I'm Kenneth Floyd. So I'm named after him. We have the same name, but I'm not like this. I'm not Junior or Little Ken. Technically, I'm Kenneth Floyd the second. But Mom was like, I don't want all that Little Ken or Kenny or anything like that. We'll just call him KL. So they might as well just put it on my birth certificate. Honestly, that would have been way easier.
So like, as long as you remember, you've always been KL since you're a little kid?
Oh, yeah. Even since I was a baby, like, all my baby pictures, like, on the back is just written, KL, age 2 months or whatever.
Oh, wow.
So,
cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
they were telling me that from day one.
Very cool. Well, you know what? That's actually a good place to start. Let's start with day one, because as I mentioned in the introduction, a lot of folks they're familiar with you recently, with you in poker, what you've done, what you've been up to. Not necessarily the personal story, and I'll be very frank, I don't really know the personal story either. So I do know just sort of like the facts, but I'd like to sort of get your take on it, and just kind of share with us what it was like. You were diagnosed when you were 6 months old with something called spinal muscular atrophy, which we looked it up. It's a condition that causes paralysis without loss of sensation below the neck. And obviously, it's a very serious condition. It's something that a lot of kids don't survive past the early years. And you were supposed to be one of them, but you had this quote. I love this quote. Screw you, doctors, and you beat the odds. Thank God you're still with us and you're thriving in your early 30s. Tell us a little bit about this condition so we can understand what it is and what it was sort of like growing up and how you reached this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an open book about it. It kind of is what it is. You described it perfectly. Whenever I explain it to people, I essentially say the same thing. It's like I'm paralyzed from the neck down, but I feel everything. So that means if I have an itch, I have to have somebody scratch it for me. If I need a drink, I have to have somebody give me a drink. If I want to go all in, I have to have somebody move my chips into the middle of the table for me. And so that's kind of what it is. Essentially, it's a neurological disorder, and it stems from a genetic mutation where I don't produce a certain section of my gene is kind of like a at fault, and basically the messages from my brain don't reach my muscles, and so because of that, they atrophy. Which is why, like, when you see me in person, I'm super thin, and I don't have a lot of bulk to me. That's mostly because there's no muscle tone there, which obviously for anybody who's ever tried to lose or gain weight, muscle weighs more
Sure.
than fat, and that's kind of where you get a lot of your tonality from. But from a life standpoint, growing up was obviously different than other kids, but you know, my parents really they fully understood what I was and wasn't capable of. And what I mean by that is, like, there's absolutely nothing that limits my uh, intellectual faculties.
Sure.
So, for
Obviously, right.
example, they really pushed hard, and they had to fight to have me in, say, regular classes
Mhm.
with an assistant. The school district wasn't particularly excited about doing that, which I had no idea why. But they were the ones that when I was doing the kindergarten, they thought really really hard. No, Tail is going to be in regular education classes,
Right.
and because of that, all of my pupils, all of my friends, everyone that I grew up with was fully able-bodied. We live in a really small town, only about 12,000 people or so. So my
Where is
class,
this? Where was this town?
uh, yeah. So I live in Effingham, Illinois. For
Okay.
those that know, the middle of the country, it's about 200 miles south of Chicago
Okay.
and about 100 miles east of St. Louis.
Okay.
My town is uh, it's kind of the crossroads of America. In fact, they call it the crossroads of America because we have two major interstate highways that intersect at our town.
Oh, there you go.
So you can basically go from the East Coast to the West Coast on one interstate, and then from the Gulf of Mexico almost all the way to Canada on the other interstate. And so it's we're kind of like a big hub. But like I said, our town is relatively small. My high school, my entire class from kindergarten all the way to high school, we only had like 250 kids in it. And I was the only one with any sort of outward physical disability, unless somebody broke their leg. But it was one of those experiences where it never felt weird because it was just normal. Nobody ever treated me, uh, not really anyway. And I'm sure when we were real little, kids are sometimes mean because
Yeah,
they're
sure.
afraid of it's afraid of what's different. But I don't like to remember like a traumatizing experience or anything.
Mhm.
I mean everybody was just accepting. It wasn't weird because this is the way it had always been from day one.
Right.
So it wasn't like, oh, it was Tail, the new kid. I
Mhm.
was just Tail.
Right.
And I think that kind of it it set up this situation where like I was I was in a spot where it didn't feel weird or outsiderish to have a disability. And because of that, um, I kind of just never really thought about it. In fact, the only time I did think about it was when I met like new folks, especially when I was like 15 and younger. You would meet new folks, and this was obviously, early 2000s, late 90s, depending on how old I was. And folks with disabilities weren't as, in society as they are now because technology hadn't gotten to that point yet. right? And when I would meet new folks, you would inevitably get that, hello,
Oh
how
gosh.
are you? And what I found was I got really good at being snarky and kind of sarcastic, at, but trying not to be rude as well,
Right.
but in a way that like broke down that barrier and made it immediately obvious that, hey, just because you see somebody that maybe uses a wheelchair, or even somebody that has maybe a hard time enunciating or speaking, like people with cerebral palsy, for example,
Right.
they might have a hard time speaking. It doesn't mean that you need to treat them as any sort of kid gloves
Right.
or difference. Just
Right.
assume that everybody's. So I got really good at kind of like breaking down that barrier. And now, admittedly, as I've gotten older, I've gotten slightly more vulgar with that. But that's just a product of my personality. I have a tendency to not do a very good job of censoring myself. But I'm getting better, damn it.
Well,
Um,
I gotta say, it's a pretty wonderful personality. Like the things that you spoke to, it makes a lot of things make sense because, again, as per that introduction and as per how I know you, I've met you as well, and just sort of seeing you interact with everyone in the poker community, it is truly just like anyone else. You truly are welcoming, and you give back just like everybody. Like it's a really cool thing. There is no barrier from what I see, and it's I guess perhaps a testament to everyone with whom you grew up, and just kind of included you, and that much more so as well to your parents who fought for that to ensure that it would happen.
Absolutely. And that's why I love poker so much. Because, you know, I say this all the time, and anybody that's ever heard me on anything else will probably know what I'm going to say, that poker is super democratic. Um, it doesn't matter anything about you personally. If you can afford the buy-in for a tournament or a cash game or whatever, you have just as much right to sit in that seat as anyone else. There isn't, it's not like golf where you have to like qualify for an open tournament via some other tournament and so on and so forth, or obviously other sporting events. There's a massive barrier to entry. You have to be physically gifted or
Right.
something in some way. All that matters in poker is that you afford to sit at the table, but B, and more importantly, that you can think in a way that allows you to hopefully outthink the other 8, 7, 6, 5, however many people are at the table.
Right.
And that is something that nearly anyone can take part in. And I think that's what draws me to the game so much. It's one of the most democratic games in the world, at least in my opinion.
Sure. Well, so, we talk about, your love for poker, and obviously most of this episode will be talking all about that. I'm a little curious, KL before poker. I don't imagine you necessarily grew up thinking, this is what's going to be, my thing to do. What were you sort of, I guess, ambitious to do, and what did you think originally would be the plan before poker kind of plucked you up and put you on this path?
Yeah, so it's interesting you ask, as um, I didn't know this at the time, but I think I was kind of subconsciously or serendipitously, depending on your perspective, following a poker path, because I actually started in pretty low. When I was coming out of high school, I was pretty low, and we know how many, former lawyers or
Sure.
now, lawyers that have made that transition. I
Mhm.
think there's something about that way of thinking,
Mhm.
that type of analytical mind that maybe draws people. That I was pretty low. The reason I was is um, I loved the idea of litigation. I like to argue. I'm a really big fan of being right. Um,
I like
real
that.
big, real big fan of being right.
Okay.
And it's one of those things where I still do love the law. And I had never seen rounders, oddly enough. I hadn't seen rounders until I moved into poker.
I think we need to
And
stop right now.
I know, right? It was so weird. Well, I hadn't until I moved into poker. I'd
Oh,
never
okay.
seen.
Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
I no, yeah, and so I didn't realize that I was like following Mike McDermott's path,
There you
um,
go.
without even knowing it. But I was in that, and I really did love the law. But the problem was, um, I just I found out that I didn't love it enough that I was willing to dedicate 15 years of my life
Mm,
being in the background for
right.
someone else to be in front of a judge before I ever got a chance to do that. And
Mhm.
that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to litigate. I wanted to be in the courtroom making oral arguments, convincing people that my way of seeing it was accurate. And I just I wasn't in love with it enough. And so I did something really weird. I switched to advertising of all things. When I
Okay.
was in, yeah, when I was in college, when I was in high school, rather, I was in a multimedia class,
Okay.
um, where basically it was a film class. Our film class, we were very lucky. We had two Academy Award winning teachers who taught the class, and we were super insanely lucky. We had colleges would regularly come into our class to learn how to teach this class.
That's cool.
Um, and this is in high school. I
Right.
mean, yeah, I was a junior and a senior. And I loved it. I loved the storytelling aspect. I think, there is a bit of an overlap there. The idea of telling a story, the idea of getting people invested in what you're trying to tell them. I think there are some similarities there, which is why I liked the idea of being a lawyer as well. Um, and so I switched to advertising, which was kind of the closest thing to that uh, mindset that was available at the University of Illinois, which is where I went to school.
Got it.
So I graduated with a degree in advertising, and because I was pre-law, I also somehow ended up with a minor in political science, which uh, which oddly enough was uh, focused. I don't even remember how I did this. I just started taking classes that interested me. But
Mhm.
my minor in political science has a focus on international geopolitics.
Oh, wow.
So you can
Well,
you,
certainly a
you
very
can
well-rounded education there.
you can imagine I'm very interested in what's happening right now.
Oh, I
Um,
can imagine.
but it was one of those things where I kind of had a whole bunch of these things that I could do relatively well. But like I said, I live in a small area. And so the opportunities here
Mm,
are very limited. It's not something that we can just pick up and move somewhere. My parents or my caregivers, like I said, I need assistance with everything.
sure.
If I need a drink in the middle of this podcast, I'm gonna say, "Hey, Dad, give me a drink." And so they're my primary caregivers, and it's not just as easy as say moving to Chicago or something
Sure.
to follow a job. And so we ended up doing something kind of crazy. Um, we opened a production company here in Effingham,
Wow.
and I made we made content for about 10 years. I
Say
produced,
we, that means you and your parents together as a joint venture?
yeah, yeah. So dad was the cameraman, and we had rigged up some technology where I was in his ear when we
Uh,
were filming on scene. If it was a live event of some sort, then I would say, hey, make sure you get this or that or whatever with a live video feed so I could see what he was seeing. And then I would edit at the house, put everything together, everything from audio to graphics to anything design work. We would do a lot in house, wouldn't outsource any of it, and it was basically a two-man gig, him and I, and we did that for, like I said, about 10 years. We did stuff for Harley Davidson, Relay for Life, um, some like Lutheran, the regional Lutheran diocese. We did a lot of stuff as charity. Obviously helping give back for the annual stair climb on September 11th. The firefighters in the area will go to the local hospital. It's only like a 5-story hospital, but they'll go up and down the stairs until they do the number of floors that the firefighters
Oh my
would
goodness.
go up on September 11th.
Wow.
And we did a video about that, which was obviously, really, really. I don't want to say fun because it's a somber experience, but it was fun in the sense that these guys, were amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
they were laughing and having a good time, and really enjoying the time that they were getting to have memorializing all this. And it was neat to see them. And obviously everybody's dog tired at the end of it, but they really embraced the moment, and being able to capture that and spread the word about it to help them raise more money was something cool. But I'm kind of rambling a little bit
That's
about
okay.
what we've
I
done.
just don't want to interrupt, but it's fascinating to hear. I mean, you obviously had a very rich, very fulfilling, very busy, active career
Yeah,
before poker.
absolutely.
So, I mean, you had all that going for you. You had this tremendous background in law, wanting to be a litigator. You had the advertising, the political side, like a lot of broad background. You really, in a sense, even despite the limited options, you kind of had a sort of a choice. Where do you want to go? And then all of a sudden, poker comes along. What was that first encounter like? And then why did you decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to leave what I've done up until now and move into something new?
Yeah, things kind of started to dry up a little bit with the advertising and production stuff that
Mm-hmm.
we were doing. We had built up a good name, but we were getting to the point where we no longer felt like we wanted to start taking big haircuts on our pricing that we
Sure.
were offering.
Sure.
And people loved the work, but they just didn't love it enough to, you know, pay fair market value for it.
A very
And
familiar story. I'm sure a lot of
absolutely,
folks have faced that before.
absolutely. And things kind of started to dry up, and it wasn't like a one moment thing. It was more of a slow, you know, transition
Sure.
type of thing. Essentially, I was in this poker group on this like super tiny like crypto poker site. It was like a Dogecoin
Okay.
poker site, and this
Okay.
was like 5 or 6 years ago. Um, when Dogecoin was like less than a penny or
Sure.
whatever it was, and we would just mess around. Basically, we would just be joking around and having fun. And I got into a group with Jared Smith, who a lot of your listeners will probably know. He's now living in Vegas. He's from St. Louis originally, which
Uh-huh.
is, like I said, an hour and a half away from me. And there were a few other people in there. Krista Borg, Melissa, Melissa 2141, for those that know screen names better than real names. they were in this group, and we ended up all together in a Skype group, and we just started studying,
Oh,
essentially. I mean, not even really actively studying, just like, you know, sending hands. And it
okay.
was just like almost like accidental studying,
Huh.
essentially. And one thing led to another, I started enjoying it more. I realized that, it was an outlet to like feed my competitiveness
Right.
that I was, I didn't know I was looking for, but I realized whenever I found it. And we were just kind of experiencing it together, and ended up starting streaming. Actually, built up a relatively moderately successful stream, averaged a little bit less than 100 viewers a session. Once after a few months of doing it consistently, and
Now, one second.
at that,
This was still a recreational pursuit. You were not a professional poker player at that time,
no,
correct?
definitely not. I was
Right.
bad. I was super bad. I was the opposite of good. I mean, I'm still bad. I'm still bad, but like not as bad. Um, no, but no, I was definitely not pro in any sense of the word. I was, hell, I was playing like, you know, $4 ABI. I mean, this was like joke
Fascinating
stuff.
to me, though, that you already felt at that time, knowing that, you're not the shiz just yet. You know what I mean? Like, why did you think, how did you come up with this name? Why would you want to stream your play? Who did you think would be tuning in?
Uh, Honestly, it was just one of those things where like Twitch poker was really starting to take shape. Um, and it was a wild west of content. And I was like, well, I mean, I'd have watched streams, and there were tons of other people who, obviously weren't doing broadcasts because they felt like they were doing like free coaching, and were some amazing player. They were just having fun. I was like, that seems fun. I kind of want to do that.
Well,
It was very much a community aspect. Obviously now it's way more complicated because it's a lot more competitive on Twitch poker. But back then, I mean, really this was back when Jay Carver was essentially running Twitch poker. I mean, he wasn't like officially running Twitch poker, but
he was the
he
end
was
boss before there were any other bosses at all. So,
exactly 100%. But we started doing this, and it was at this point like we started getting closer to 2017. Um, I had stopped streaming as regularly because I was starting to take things more serious. I was starting to really actually, you know, study, try to find ways to study.
right.
Um, and then Daniel announces, "Oh, hey, by the way, submit a video. I'm going to put a person. It ended up being three people that I'm going to put someone in the main event,
For sure.
and I was not going to submit. I figure I had no way of winning, and even if I do win, how am I going to get out there, et cetera, et cetera. And this group that I was in with Jared and Alyssa and Chris, um, and a few others, they were like, "No, you're submitting. Like you have to submit. Like there's no way you can't." Um, and so, like on the last day, I
Yeah.
think that you could
Wow.
submit, I submitted a video, and it was me and my dad actually sitting right where I'm sitting now, or close to where I'm sitting now.
Yeah.
And he was sitting behind me, and I was just like, "Hey, this is who I am. This is my dad. He holds my cards." I love the opportunity. I don't remember what I said. I didn't write anything down. I
Right.
just completely won it entirely off the cuff.
Uh-huh.
And, it was one of those things where I
Hmm.
didn't really think about it. I was like, there's no way I'm going to win.
Right.
And then I think it was a day later, maybe not even a day, before it had, it wasn't even a day because I don't think they had officially closed
Uh-huh.
submissions.
Right.
He
Right.
retweets, he retweets it and goes, well, I think we have a winner.
Oh boy.
And I was
That's
like,
a very life-changing moment right there.
yeah, I was like, what? I just messaged somebody in the group. I'm like, guys, I think I won. And then
Unbelievable.
like he looked it back a tiny bit, and I was like, "Oh no, did you send it on accident? Like, was it a mistake?" And they were like, "No, dude, you probably just had to look it back because it wasn't officially closed yet,
Okay.
etc., etc., etc." Like, trust me, you won. I'm like, and so
Wow.
we were like, we didn't know, and then he sent me a message, or he posted a message, about we're not sending one, we're sending three,
Right.
and they posted the video.
Right. I remember
These
that.
are the three, and I was on there, and then from there it was a race to figure out how to get out there. I
1 second. So I want to stop you right there because I'm definitely going to ask you about that. But
mhm,
so that's where I'm sort of interested again. Before that, it's very clear you've been playing online, you've been streaming, and I imagine that's something you could do on your own. But you say, this is my dad, he holds my cards. What was it like, sort of like figuring out how to play live poker? Did your dad come with you right from the beginning? Did he know how to play? Did you have
yeah,
to teach him? And where did you play? Was it home game? I mean, a lot of questions there.
yeah. So we played. Like I said, we live about an hour and a half from St. Louis, which is the closest live room. And then this was kind of during the beginning of the heyday of the mid major. And
Uh-huh.
so there were a few mid majors that would go to St. Louis, and we had been over there, I think, twice for like little day trips,
Like
and played.
HPTs, MSPTs, like that type?
Exactly.
Okay.
It was HPT exactly, which they're no longer around.
RIP HPT.
Yeah,
Yes.
rest in peace. I'm definitely going to miss that series. But yeah, they would have events at Ameristar or Lumiere, which are in St. Louis,
Right.
and we would go for like a day trip and play like some super tiny, side event or whatever. It was like a 200 or something. Um, and we kind of just figured it out. I mean, my dad knew how to play poker, but we'd never played live before. So we didn't really know the uh, kind of the nuances or the differences of live play versus online play.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I raised illegally like one of my
Uh-huh.
first sessions.
Hmm.
I mean, no, sir, you have to raise at least this much. And
Right.
I'm like, well, no, oh, my bad. And it's just all those things that new players,
Mm.
kind of deal with. We dealt with as well, but
Right.
obviously it was both of us needing to learn
Uh-huh.
um, on the fly versus one. And then little things like how he shows me my cards,
Right.
just practicing that. So
Right.
that
You don't
way,
want to show anyone
only
else, obviously.
exactly,
Right.
protecting the hand, but also, you know, giving me the ability to see what it is that we
Sure.
have. And honestly, it was one of those. That's just you know repetitions.
Hmm.
After two or three tournaments, you kind of figure out what works, figure out what doesn't work. Now we've done it enough
Hmm.
that we've got a had a routine where
Right.
when we show up to play.
Right.
First thing we do is go to whoever the floor is on duty and say, "Hey, we're here." Most people know me by now. If they don't, we explain, how it works.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever had an issue. The only time that we ever do have an issue is if, obviously we're taking up extra space
Yeah.
at the table because he sits, he has to sit beside me.
Okay.
And so the only time we've ever had an issue is, if a player is maybe having a bad day and doesn't want to shift over a little bit,
Right.
just, hey, everybody at the table, can I move around, and just give a little bit, extra room. Or sometimes it was funny during the series, they had so many new dealers.
Right. Yes, they
That
did.
when we would sit down, um, the box was no longer perfectly square for them. So like the 5 and 6, or depending if it was 8 or 9 or
Right.
whatever, wouldn't be perfectly split
Okay.
between the dealer. And every now and then they'd be like, "No, we need to square up," and everybody'd be like, "How?" Like, and then they'd be like, "Well, just figure it out." And I'm
Oh
like,
gosh.
and I would have to say like, "Given we have an extra person, that you're just gonna have to kind of make do right now." And
Right.
then they'd be like, "Oh, well, that's not how it's supposed to be, but it's fine."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just like, "Okay, okay." I
They
know
had
you're
a tough
having,
time. They were new dealers, so
I know you're having a bad day, and I'm gonna get, I totally understand.
right,
So no
right.
big deal.
So
But
so one
it's
second. Let's walk it back a little bit again. Just one more thing. So you go into a casino the first time in St. Louis. I mean, I
yeah,
know and that's an experience that I'm sure so many folks in the Cards Chat community have had. I know I've had it.
hmm
I remember it's a very special kind of thing. You're excited. There's a lot of
absolutely.
emotions,
You don't know what's gonna happen. You're like, oh, am I gonna leave like super rich today? Like,
right,
I mean,
exactly. It's huge. And at the same time, there's also all of these sort of logistical concerns that you have. Was there any sense of like being intimidated by it, or was it determination, or was excitement kind of overcoming all of it for you?
yeah, no, it was obviously super exciting. That was the overarching, kind of feeling. There's a little bit of, you know, unsureness, I guess. Like I said, just like raising illegally, for
Mhm.
example,
Mhm.
is a great example. But things like that. But I think it's one of those deals where you kind of fall back on your experience from the digital
Right,
interface,
right.
and that helps so much
Mhm.
because not all of it is foreign to you at that
Mhm.
point. The handwriting things are still the same. You still get the same amount of cards. You still have to follow the action in the same order at the table. It's all, there is familiarity to you that kind of makes it more inviting and feel more like home. And obviously now a live table does feel like home. Like it's super textable.
Right.
It's 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 amazing who you get to meet that you would never ever meet in a million years at a poker table. Um, and those are kind of the things that once you get beyond that first hour or 2 hours of your first time ever, you figure it out relatively quick. At least we did, which I think is a good sign for anybody else. Because if we can figure it out with two people having to do so, then it shouldn't be intimidating for very long for others. And I think for new players at a live venue, once you kind of get past that, it really is just pure unadulterated euphoria. Assuming you don't get sucked out on, obviously.
Right. Of course.
But even
Of
if you
course.
do, hey, at least you have
A
at
great
least you
story to
can,
tell, right?
exactly, you can join the untold masses
Uh-huh.
in giving your bad beat story to your friends that do not care at
Right.
all.
So let's jump back to those untold masses. Let's jump back to 2017. You get the amazing news, life-changing moment. Daniel's like, we're putting you in the main event. So, okay, you said there's a lot of stuff to figure out before you ended up, there in the main event in Las Vegas. So sort of let's take through a little timeline from, okay, we know that's happening. How does that happen? And then the run itself, what's it like, playing in that main event? And we know you cashed. It must have been real special.
It was, yeah. So as soon as we found out, the first thing we had to do was figure out how do we get there and where we're staying. Obviously, we need some different accommodations. We're gonna be there, you know, a decently long time, at
Was
least
your
for that
first trip
point.
to Las Vegas?
It was my second time there, but
Okay.
my first time we were like really small kids,
Okay.
and we did like a road trip as young kids. We did a road trip through the entire like western portion of the U.S. And so I don't really count that because it just doesn't count. But we we had to figure out how we're getting there and where we're staying. So we actually had a stream afterwards where I was like, listen, guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. There is travel funds in the giveaway, but it's just not gonna be enough. I need some help getting out there. And so we had a stream and we raised like we raised like over $2,000, I think it was, to help get out there. When I'm there, we stayed at the Rio, which made the logistics of playing much easier.
Right.
Didn't have to drive to and from. But on the other hand, uh, you know, there are logistics that we did have to figure out, but we needed to rent a hospital bed, for example, because I need that to sleep on. We had to like confirm that the rooms in the Rio were big enough that you could put a hospital bed in the room. Oh, and still be able to like drive a wheelchair around. Now, obviously, we didn't know this at the time, but the Rio is technically all suites.
Yeah, they have plenty
So
of big rooms there. I've stayed
yeah,
there.
there's plenty of room in those rooms, but we had no idea. We
Right.
didn't know anything. So we had to like ask about that and figure it out. And Christian Sanchez, who is Ryan's kind of right, or I'm sorry, not Ryan, Daniel.
We'll get to Ryan
Uh, we'll
later.
get to Ryan. Daniel's right arm,
Sure.
Christian was, you know, massively helpful
Sure.
and helping us kind of negotiate a lot of these things. But then we drove out and everybody's like, well, Taylor, how'd you get there if your vehicle was, not great? Well, it's funny you ask. We almost didn't make it. Um, we broke down in Albuquerque.
Gosh.
So
Oh boy.
yeah, yeah, we
Yikes.
broke down in Albuquerque and we had to stop for an entire day.
Mm.
Um, we had gotten off the interstate and we were driving to get back on, and we were sitting at a stoplight. Remember, this is like late June, early July. It's
Yeah.
approximately 155 outside. I mean, it's super hot,
Yeah.
and the van randomly starts going ballistic.
Oh my God.
The windshield wipers turn on, the alarm goes off, it
Oh,
starts spraying wiper fluid
not
on the
optimal. Not
windshield.
optimal.
Yeah, just randomly. Mom was driving, dad's in the back. He goes, what are you doing? She's like, I'm not doing anything. I did not touch anything. So we find a Dodge dealership. They look at it. They're able to find out it's some sort of electrical issue. And it ends up working out in the end. We were able to get back on the road a few hours later, drive for a few hundred more miles, and then finish the trip the following day. But like I said, we almost didn't make it because we were set to arrive, I believe, the day before my day one.
Okay.
And so if we would have been delayed any further, I was playing 1D. So I was playing
that's it. You can't miss it.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I was like, I'm either showing up and playing or I'm just not playing at all. And we just, wasted a whole bunch of time and effort.
Yeah.
But we ended up making it in time. And I get there, and obviously we did end up getting there a day early, even after all of not a day early, a day before I was set to play, even with all of the issues. And that day, I was able to go and observe the tournament area and kind of
get yourself familiarized.
Yeah, soak in the ambiance and not be overwhelmed, I guess, by the moment. And I really think that was a big asset in not feeling like massive nerves on day one.
For sure.
Because it was obviously the main event. It's a big freaking deal.
Right.
But
Yes, it is.
being there the day before, being able to oh, there's the mothership, and oh my God, that's that's so and so, and all these people that you see on TV, and like, holy cow, and so being able to get all the fanboy stuff out of the way without the playing pressure on top, I think was a big asset. And then, like you said, we somehow just kept finding a bag.
I never found a bag, so that's pretty cool.
I mean, it was crazy. I mean, I never felt overwhelmed at any point. There were a few spots where, I accidentally made the right checkers, and I had no idea why I was doing it. But now that I know more and go back and look at the hands or remember the hands, I'm like, oh, hey, that's actually correct. That's the right play.
That worked out well.
That is silver approved.
There you go.
But it was one of those. It was surreal and exciting. We got to play with David Benjamin on my left for an evening. I ran a bluff on Harrison Gimbel, which was fun. I 3-bet Michael Acevedo repeatedly on day 3.
That's
And
Mr. GTO, folks, if you don't know that name, Michael Acevedo.
I didn't realize it was Michael Acevedo. He pulls me aside on break, and he's like, in that thick accent, you've been playing very well today.
This is before he wrote his book, Modern Poker Theory, right?
This is before he wrote the book,
but he was still just as talented.
He was still a sicko. That table that day had Harrison Gimbel, Michael Acevedo, 2 Eastern Europeans that had won bracelets that year already.
Oh boy!
It was a bloodbath.
Oh yeah, throw right into the deep end there.
Yeah, we held our own. It was fun. I spiked quads on the turn for my turn at life to stay alive for my turn at life. I ran kings into aces. against Radoha. I can't say his first name.
Okay.
He's a pro. But it was funny because my dad celebrated extensively when we strike the clubs, and so they were like open for that jam. He snap calls. I'm like, oh shit, you have aces, right? He's like, yeah, you have kings, right? I'm like, yeah, okay, let's run it. And I was just getting ready to leave, and we strike a king in the window, and then just turn dead. And my dad was like slamming the rail, like, yeah, and the whole
It's the
convention,
main event. You're allowed a little bit. That's pretty
the
cool.
whole the whole convention center knew something happened because everybody looks up, his voice carries, and he sits down and he looks at Mark. That's his name, Mark. He looks at Mark and he goes, "Oh my God, I am so sorry,"
Oh
because
gosh.
he kind of like he realized immediately that was a bit an outburst, and Mark was like, "No, man, that was awesome." Like he really he enjoyed them,
I love it.
he recognized the emotion
Yeah.
and about that this was a big deal, and I think that poker was getting to a point where people are too robotic, um, too almost not excited when they win. I know that when you get excited when you win, it could theoretically lead to outbursts when you lose,
Yeah.
which are never a good thing.
Of course.
But I do think that there is a place for emotion in poker. And you see all these high rollers and whatnot, which are obviously filled with the best players in the world who are very even keeled. But I'm not gonna lie, I don't hate it when you see a little bit of when they strike, some sort of miracle card
Slice of
or
life.
whatever.
You get once in a while celebration is cool and called for. Not not too much,
Absolutely,
but yeah, yeah. Uh,
absolutely, and so it was a blast. We ended up uh, making one pay jump, and it was honestly the thing that has allowed me to stay in the community, not because of the winnings. That's not it at all. It's I get to meet and be around so many people. Whenever I won, everybody in our poker group immediately, without question, booked an airline ticket and a hotel so they could come out and rail me playing the name. These are people
incredible.
I had never met in real life before. We'd
Wow.
only met via Skype and online. And they were so excited that they were just like, no, dude, we're gonna be there. And we got to hang out and enjoy each other and have fun. And obviously the main event was life altering. But one of my most treasured memories from that trip is being able to meet them in person and just enjoy that time with these friends that you've come to know so well, but um, had never seen in person.
That's just absolutely an incredible thing, and it's just an amazing story. Like if you put like numbers, black on white, so you see, okay, KL Clash, cashed, made the money, great, but that background story is so rich there. It's an unbelievable thing, and there's clearly so much more to it that I'd say even meant more to you, clearly, than
Abs-
just being able to cash. Very cool.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, in a sense, just to fast forward 4 years, I suppose, in a sense, there was somewhat of a repetition of that story. As far as I know the story from last year, a lot of similar types of elements. For those who didn't exactly, who may don't know or don't remember, when Veronica sort of kind of began campaigning on your behalf, how did that sort of story begin? Did you know her? Anything like that to sort of recap? How did you make your way to the WSOP 2021 last year?
Yeah, so I was on her show. I actually was a viewer of her show on YouTube when she very first started, and I randomly retweeted one of the episodes. I was like, "Hey, this is a really good episode. You should check it out." And I was not like, I'm still not, but I was not like Twitter popular or anything, but I had like 2K followers. And she just sent me a random DM, was like, "Hey, thank you so much for retweeting. I really appreciate it." Um, and she asked me to come on and talk about what we're talking about and other stuff. Was just starting Rainstorm Pro at that time, so I was like, hell yeah, I would love to come on and show my product
There you go.
I'm getting ready to launch. And during the course of that conversation, she asked if I had uh, done that since, and that was when I just kind of, I don't know, offhandedly, I didn't even think about it. I mentioned that no, I hadn't. My current mode of transportation wasn't reliable enough
Right.
to make a trip like that. And, it was like really we were just doing, what we had to around town and then the occasional doctor visit if necessary. And she apparently that kind of like stuck in her head. And she messaged me like 2 weeks later, maybe it was,
Right.
and was like, "Hey, you mentioned this on the show, and it's like really bothered me since. Do you mind if I reach out to some people and maybe see what we can do?" And I was like, "No, thank you for asking. I don't mind. I didn't expect anything. And I honestly had kind of not given it too much more thought. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden, I see this video posted with her and Aaliyah and a few other friends that I had, gotten close with in the intervening years. And it was hysterical. And I loved it about, this kid is, so toughy. And, because I had made a joke about how I had outlasted Daniel in 17 in the main event. And I was like, I think by the transitive property, that means I was better than Daniel. And you just, making a joke. And she, obviously was like, "Oh man, this kid, he's bragging about being better than Daniel Negreanu. We're getting out to Vegas to be able to put him in his place and stack KO." And that was kind of the joke angle of it. And they had started this GoFundMe, and this was at the like a month and a half before COVID started,
Right.
like
Right.
officially started, and they had raised like a little over, I think it was like $8,000 in those first few weeks.
Right.
And I was like blown away. I was like, holy cow,
Yeah.
this is insane. I was never expecting anything. And
And then Johnny
it's like
Vibes comes along.
it slowed down for quite some time. And then, obviously we know all about what happened with Veronica in the intermediate, intervening time. I kind of spoke about that during the introduction at the GPI.
Sure.
For those that are wondering, that was, I mentioned, bravery, and that's what I was referring to. It takes a lot of guts to like stand up and say, "Hey, I think somebody is doing something wrong in the poker community." That's not easy to do, especially in the age of social media, especially for a female, where I've seen some of the things that she's been attacked with privately and publicly sometimes. And it's just absolutely viral. And I know people are like, maybe aware and grateful, but I don't think they fully know everything. And I don't want to share, obviously, so it's not mine to share. But I hope people realize. But yeah, like you said, it kind of died down for a little bit. The fundraiser did, and then basically just sent me a message and was like, I don't remember exactly what it said, but I'm paraphrasing. It was like basically, I'm sick of this shit. We're finishing it. Like, like, like that. Just her resolving that this is going to happen
Wow.
one way or another. And so they did this amazing, hilarious roast where it's still on her channel. I would encourage everyone to go and watch it. It is hysterical. Ryan Lang did a set on the roast, which everyone knows Ryan Lang now
Yeah.
because of his insane 2021 series that he had.
Well, that and because he was a guest on episode number 71 of the podcast, just that too.
Absolutely.
Just saying, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, far more for episode 71. Let's be
Yes.
honest.
And Johnny
Absolutely.
Vibes was 72. Just putting it out there. But yeah, go
Don't watch that. Pause this right now. Don't watch that.
ahead.
But she put together this hilarious roast of me and her, and still home you stopped by randomly and donated some money and obviously his time. We had no idea he was going to show up. He just like saw it on Twitter and then was like, "Hey, can I stop by?" And we're like, "No, Phil, you definitely can't." I mean, what do you say? Absolutely, you can stop by. Um, and it was a blast. And then, like you said, Johnny at Jerry Gates' wedding in Mexico drunkenly posts a tweet that says, "For every retweet this gets, I'm going to donate $5 to the fund." And Johnny and I spoke about this extensively in October and November when I was out there. And I'm sure that I'm not saying anything that he wouldn't say himself. But he was just like, he's like, I didn't really think anything of that. I figured it would get, maybe 100 or so. And, that would be that. But it
2000.
it got almost 2,000. Well, I'd say over 2,000 as
Right.
far as I know. And he told me that
That's
he moved up
10,000
the
bucks,
next
folks. Quick on the math.
he, he,
$10,000.
he moved up the next day. Or I'm sorry, he was on the flight back rather.
Yeah.
He said the flight with no internet was the biggest sweat of his life. He said. Because he had no idea. He
Right.
knew it before he took off.
Right.
Oh my God, this thing's gaining traction. But
Right.
he didn't know that it was what it was going to be when he landed. Um, but then, I mean, he did something incredible. He was like, "Listen, this got really big," and he could have, he could have easily
Back, sure.
said, "Yeah," and said, "Sorry guys, this got bigger than I thought." But he didn't. He was, he and I talked after that happened over the phone, and then in person, obviously, a few times, and he just he was in a place where like he was like, this was a lot of money to me. And it still is a lot of money. And that's a lot of money to anybody. Everybody, I think people assume, oh, it's Johnny Vibes. He's a YouTube star. He's got to be super rich. And that's not the case. I mean, this guy puts in work, hard work. I mean, he's got to pay the bills like anybody else. And 10 grand is quite a
Small
few
amount of
bills.
money.
that's a lot of bills, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And he was like, listen, this isn't a small amount of money for me, it's a big deal. But I think that, I think it's a good reason. And we talked that. And I was like, honestly, dude, if it weren't for you, we wouldn't have hit the road.
That's
And
right.
I wouldn't be here because not only did he donate, but all the awareness that he brought,
Mm,
all those retweets led other people to themselves then be generous
mm.
as well and donate.
Yeah.
And because of everyone being involved, not only were we able to get the vehicle we needed, but we were able to get not just a vehicle, but the vehicle that would allow us to actually go places. And what
Right.
I
Not
mean by
just
that,
not just the WSOP, but you can keep going places.
exactly. And what I mean by that is all of the things that I travel with is a lot of stuff, which requires a trailer. And a trailer on a conversion vehicle basically doesn't exist because the conversion adds a lot of weight
Sure.
to the vehicle. So what we ended up doing was the first generation of a new vehicle, which is a Chevrolet SUV, and it's the first time they've ever done it. And because it's an SUV, it's able to pull a trailer even with the added weight. But as you can imagine, that first generation of the SUV is mind-bogglingly expensive. I mean, it is stupid expensive. But we were able to do that because of the generosity of everyone. It actually went a little bit above and beyond what we were asking for, what the listed goal of the GoFundMe was.
Sure.
And then obviously Bill Perkins,
Yeah.
he was the one that was the big chunk that along with Johnny, between the two of them, that's essentially over a third of the end price, almost half actually of the price
Right.
of the vehicle. And so Bill donated 25 grand to everything as well. And without those two, you know,
You don't get there.
Bill was much more in the background. So
Right.
I always mention him, but I don't want to like blow up his spot because I don't know how, you know, in the forefront he wants to be. Um, which I
Well,
understand because
folks who want to learn more about Bill, they listen to episode 65, so it's all good.
yeah, see, you got it all down
You
pat, man.
gotta, you gotta, you
You,
gotta plug. You gotta show the way.
and you even know what episode number it is.
I
I love
might
that.
happen to have a list in front of me, but you do the name dropping. I'll just match the numbers. It's very, very simple.
Perfect. I love that. Well, we're gonna have still been on because he didn't give his episode number. We're gonna have
Who?
to still.
Oh,
We're gonna have
episode
to.
4. That's episode
There
4.
we go. Okay. See. All right. There we go. Yeah. But
Incredible, incredible
it,
stuff.
it was one of those things where we wouldn't have gotten anywhere without that. And
Right.
then um, the trip itself was expensive as well. And
Right. It was
so
2 months. You were there for the entire WSOP.
so I'm very lucky in that I'm a backing group,
Okay.
and basically the stable was like they wanted me to be out there the year, well, 2 years before, um, and we couldn't go because of the vehicle
Right.
situation.
Right.
And they were like, "Listen, man, we want you here for the entire time, playing a full schedule if you can do it." And Scott Ball, which I'm sure people know
The
Scott Ball
player
now
of the year,
because
the No Limit Hold'em Player of the Year 2021, two
I
double
mean,
bracelet winner.
just winning the 5K six stacks,
Right.
what many people believe is the toughest tournament there is at the series, and then obviously winning the uh, uh, one drop, the little one drop, the 1100. But he connected me with some people. So Maggie was one and a few other people, and they came through. Again, I don't know how much they want me to talk about it, so I won't go into big detail. But if it weren't for them, we wouldn't have been able to manage the trip itself and do that. So, basically, the poker community got me out there so I could donate buy-ins, which I did. I mean, let's be
Just
honest.
fun. It's ostensibly a funny line. I know it's fun. That's great.
No, it's true. I mean, I wouldn't have said it if it wasn't funny. But true.
That's great.
But the most important part was my family and I were there for the whole time, which was in and of itself something we never could dream doing in a million years.
Yeah.
The longest we'd ever been somewhere was 2 weeks.
Right.
And that had been years and years and years since we'd ever, had a true getaway. And being there, obviously I was playing constantly. Sure. So it wasn't, purely a vacation. And my mom and dad both were doing remote type things, remote work things. But in the end, we weren't at home. We were out in a different place, meeting with all these people that we had gotten to know. And
if I remember correctly, you had told me at some point that during the pandemic, you hadn't, forget leaving town or anything, you hadn't left your house for 2 years.
A year and 2 months. Yeah.
Wow.
A year and 2 months it had been since I had left. And so
that's a big deal.
It was a massive deal just being able to be somewhere that wasn't our house, but also be somewhere surrounded by people that we knew and knew us, and that we cared about deeply, and that they cared about us, deeply. I mean, the friends that we've made, are really, now family. I mean, I still want to take all their tips when we get seated at the same table. But I mean, I can't wait to hopefully have a chance to, figure out a way to get back this summer, because again, my stable is saying we want you there for the entire time. We need you playing a full schedule.
I know you kind of joined Alan Kessler's, he was episode number 73 for those listening, but I know you've joined his kind of like mixed game group. So if you are thinking to head out there, you're gonna mix it up a little bit in the non-Hold'em events. I'm going to try to. Okay. I started doing Lindy's book, which for anybody that's interested in learning next games, there's literally no better book, in my opinion. At least so far. Games, that's the name of the book, right? It's so good. Lays everything out so easily and clearly. And he does that also, just by the way, on the Cards Chat podcast in episode number 49. Just want to point that out too. Perfect. I love it. I love it. It's almost like you have a list too, Kate. But no, it's something that I definitely try to get into. It looks like everyone playing the mixed games when I was there was having so much fun. Yes, sir. I kept reading so many stories about people having a blast in those events, and I certainly want to try to. But I think the Sable asking me to, or trying to get me to be out there for the full time, it's obviously means a lot to me, because that means that they're thinking, okay, he's good money in these events. Like they believe in me as a player enough that they want me playing a stupid schedule. That they want me playing like this insanely, crazy schedule, which I want to do. Yeah.
but that is absolutely what I want to do.
Good
So right
spot to
now,
be in, man.
my full focus is figuring out how to get out there. From a logistical and financial perspective,
Sure.
because it's not cheap staying
Right.
there for that amount
Well,
of time.
see, so I'm not just going to wish you good luck with that. I'm going to try and help you because, folks, if you're listening, maybe you heard it very briefly, but if you've been watching, you see on KL's screen, he's got the little logo there for Range Trainer Pro. It's time. Let's go ahead and show this product, KL. Tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about Range Trainer Pro. Maybe we'll, if you tell enough people and they're interested enough, maybe we'll get you a little bit closer to financing this summer's trip, hopefully. So what is Range Trainer Pro? How does it work and who is it for?
absolutely. I love it. So it came from an idea that I got in 2017 during the main event when with Daniel. So many people reached out and offered access to information,
Right, I remember that.
training sites, video content. People even offered to do little coaching sessions with me in the lead up, which all of it I was eternally grateful for. It truly helped me improve and allowed me to deepen my understanding. However, everybody had opening ranges, but nobody had good way to study them. It was just, here are the ranges, figure it out. Which works for a lot of people, but it didn't work for me. It wasn't a good way to internalize that information. And so that was the seed of the idea. It was, how can I help people learn pre-flop ranges in a way that is easier to understand, but B, it's easier to digest and actually learn. Um, and so I will
Before you can was this part of also the advertising, KL, kind of thinking of
probably,
was that an influence there?
probably, I think
Uh-huh.
so. But essentially, it took about 2.5 years before we had
Okay.
a product. Before we had a product that
Yeah.
was actually usable. But essentially, what Range Shampoo is, it started as a pre-flop range study tool. So you would either use our ranges that are GTO sold, or you can add your own if you want to. And then there's a training tool that allows you to, it will give you a hand and say, this is what position you're in, and this is your stat depth. What should you do? And it literally looks like an online poker table.
Right.
There's a
Exactly.
table with all 8 seats, and then it puts you at a seat and says, you have 10-5 suited in the hijack on 30 big blinds. What do you do? And then you go through and answer, 50 or 100 or whatever, uh, you know, situations like that. And you internalize it by actually playing hands. You're actually playing a hand when you do that. Since then, we've expanded significantly. We've moved into post-flop database training as well. So everybody is really excited about solvers and PO and simple GTO solver and all these amazing tools, but they're super difficult to use. They're just not user friendly at all. And so what we've done is we've consulted with some industry leading players, people like Jonathan Van Fleet and Jason Kuhn, as well as this is partner Ryan the Plant,
Yeah,
who
we'll talk
people,
about him in a moment. Yeah.
and so those, taking data points from all these different people, we've built trees, post flop trees for GTO solutions, and we've ran the thoughts for every single flop, turn, and river that there is. Every single statistically significant slot turn river, which is 1,755 slots, and then obviously every turn, every river. And we've built a tool that is literally point and click or tap if you're on a mobile device. And you can go through and see what a solver wants to do in certain situations as a way to study and kind of improve your understanding of the game.
And when we talk about who is this app for, the Range Trainer Pro, look, I'll be very honest. I've never really done any sort of hard meat. I always use myself as the barometer. I've never done any hardcore mathematical type of study, charts, range. I mean, to me, that's not that it's Greek, because I understand the concept of it, but it's more of like, it just seems too difficult. And this, you're saying, basically removes that barrier, and, pretty much anyone with a solid understanding of poker can use it.
Exactly. If you can point a mouse, you can literally use our tool. Everything is very intuitive. It's just point and click. You have to, all you have to know is how many big blinds do you have, what position are you in, and what position is the villain in. Those are like 3 things you need to know. Once you know that, you just select the right situation, and boom, it presents you with the number, all the slots that are available. You can select the slot, or if you want to, you can do a random one if you're just interested in studying it generally, from a macro level. And you can dive in and kind of understand what the theory wants to do. And this tool isn't for just super hardcore players. It's designed to help anyone who is interested in making money in poker more easily understand the theory of the game, even if their games are not at a point where they're applying perfect theory. Because let's be honest, most live games are very soft, and you should be making really big deviations from theory as a way to maximize how much money you make. But what I always tell people is you cannot break the rules effectively unless you first know what the rules are. And in this case, the rules are GTO. That is the baseline from which you should start. And then you can break those rules based on the game that you're in, because you're able to give a legitimate, logical rationale as to why you're doing so. And all that means is that you're thinking about the game at a level that is one step deeper than your opponent. And really, at the end of the day, that's where you make your money. Thinking about the game one step deeper than your opponent does. Not 2, because then you get into fancy play syndrome where you're doing stuff that doesn't make any sense to them.
Right.
But if you're able to think about one step deeper and then adjust accordingly, you're gonna make the right decisions, and that's what matters. I can't guarantee you we're gonna make you more money, because I can't control variance. What I can control is your decision making.
Right.
And if you're making good decisions, eventually you're probably gonna make more money. And that's what we try to do. And we try to do it because of 2 reasons. A, I think knowledge in poker should be accessible. And when I say accessible, I mean easy to use, which we've talked about, but also affordable. I don't think that you should have to be independently wealthy or already have a lot of experience in, or a lot of success in poker to try to improve in poker. So what we do is we've made our tools as affordable as possible while still being able to pay the bills, if you will. And what that has led to is the most robust pre and post flop training tool together at the most affordable price by about 66%. So we're about a third of the price of what I would consider our next leading competitor. And what's nice is our database of solutions for post flop is constantly growing. I
Right.
have 10 servers running right now, 24/7,
Amazing.
and we're running solutions at all times. And it's not like we wait to add them. As soon as they're done, boom, they go on production database. So you can be on the site one day and they're like, oh man, they don't have this spot. And there's a really real chance, there's a very real chance that the next day you'll pop in the site and be like, hey, this wasn't here yesterday. Cool.
Right.
I'm going to study that.
Cool. Hold on one sec. So you talk about making good decisions, and one of the great decisions you've obviously made, we mentioned Ryan LaPlante a couple of times, episode 33, by the way, and he's a CardsChat ambassador. How'd you get involved in working with Ryan, and what sort of involvement does he have with the app?
Yeah, so Ryan and I met as I've met most people over Twitter.
Mhm.
And I had posted about being interested in joining a stable as I was taking the game more seriously. And he sent me a message and was like, I think this would make sense. Let's do a coaching session, see where your game's at, and move from there. And I joined his stable right at that point after our session and had been with him and then moved over to the people that backed him in the time since, which is Team 651, hashtag Team 651. Let's go. And I really, obviously, I love being with them because at no point has anyone ever sent me a message saying, why aren't you playing? As I've moved, as I've moved into, being a bit of an entrepreneur and trying to start this business,
Right.
and then helping manage Ryan's training site,
Mhm.
LearnProPoker, which you're obviously very
Yep.
well aware of.
Yep.
I manage that as well as run Range Pro,
Uh-huh.
and that's full-time stuff right
Yeah,
there,
for sure.
doing those two things. And so we kind of got started at that. And as he's moved into doing his training site, I was still just being coach, and that's I am. And since then we've become very good friends. It's no longer a coach student
Right.
interaction. It's we talk every day, and it's not even about poker anymore. It's
That's
about
beautiful.
our lives.
Yeah.
But he and Chris are part of the family, and I like to think that we're kind of part of theirs as well. To a certain extent.
Mhm.
And as I started playing with them, and he started learning pro poker, I was like, hey man, you realize I used to have a production company, and I'm a good editor.
Right.
Do you need help with that? And so one thing led to another. I started doing editing for them, just to help out, and then it blossomed into more
Awesome.
and more things. And then I went to him and his business partner with my Range Pro idea, and was connected with my business partner in Matt, who is the developer of the site, Matt McElligott. He's the mastermind behind the ease of use of
Right.
the site. And it's all kind of just been an easy flow since then. And
Amazing.
if it wasn't for Ryan, responding to my public, Twitter post saying, hey, if anybody's looking, for an American on a gray market site in
Right.
Illinois, to play poker. And back then, well, it happened to be just that person, Ryan said. Which is, I mean, he took a chance on, making me, a player under him. And, obviously we're at, some not insignificant amount on the table, but more importantly, we're both, you know, extremely good friends at this point, and
Amazing. Amazing.
that's what I think that's what we both value the most.
That's huge. And, like I said, it's so wonderful hearing your story, hearing you open up, obviously, about, your professional activities, how you got into poker. It's an amazing story. And thank you so much for walking us through that journey, KL.
Absolutely.
That kind of exhausts my questions that I had for you. But of course, the CardsChat community, from the forums, they had a bunch of questions for you. And this is now the segment of the show. I hope we'll try to get through as many as we can. We turned to the CardsChat community to see what questions they wanted to ask our guests. We do have a dedicated thread on the CardsChat forum. So as we announce who our guests will be, folks, please be sure to send in your questions. And we got a couple from Crystals. Thank you very much, Crystals, for sending this in. Crystals wants to know, KL, have you ever had other people assist you while you're playing poker, or is it just you and your dad?
Yeah. So in October and November, Mom stepped in a few times to let Dad go play daily or something for fun, which was cool. Mom does not play poker at all.
Okay.
So that's definitely, I have to be a lot more vigilant to make sure that I'm, hey, no, I said 1,500. That's a 5,000 chip.
Right.
Let's not put that one out there. But that's fun. We have a blast, and everyone is always very, very welcoming and just super gracious when she's there. And I saw Johnny vibes at the Venetian when I was playing at Venetian there, and he was on the wait list, and it was going to be like at least an hour and a half before he could get a seat. So he tagged in for Dad for about 20 minutes or so, and we had a good time just hanging out.
That's so cool.
Me trying not to look like a fool while he was seeing my hands.
Very, very cool. Very cool. Next one, it's kind of a biggie, but I always ask, each person's questions, together, one after the other. Crystals wants to know, what do you hope will be your lasting legacy in poker, KL?
Yeah, so I've actually spoken about this a lot. I care about leaving the game better than when I found it, making it better overall. That's what Wayne's Fair Pro is all about. That is why, I mentioned, we care about making it easy to use and affordable. I want to make poker a legitimate thing that people can turn to as a competitive outlet and not feel like they're just an ATM. I want them to feel like they have a fighting shot at the table, because at the end of the day, that's all any of us want. We want to feel like poker is a fair game. It's not just people, oh man, I went so bad and whatnot. At the end of the day, it's a fair game, and I want people to know that. And I want people to feel like they have a fair shot at competing and succeeding in whatever way they want to define success. Maybe success for someone isn't winning a bracelet. Maybe it's just, being break even and able to have that as a fun pastime that they do. Maybe if somebody is, in a dead-end job and they want to make poker a legitimate side income and maybe a primary income someday. Whatever your range of goals are, from I want to just understand the game better to I want to be a World Series champion. Anything in between, that's what I care about. And I'm hoping that every decision that I make, at least from an outward perspective, that might have an impact on the game for other people, is in furtherance of that goal.
Love it. That's a beautiful answer. Wow, thank you. I should have ended off with that. I should have repositioned. That's just a beautiful answer. But poker, you got to change gears. So we'll change gears with Chica Bonita, who asks this great question. Also very apropos. Wants to know, KL, what is your favorite poker variant outside of No Limit Hold'em, especially now that you're kind of getting into the mix?
No limit deuce to 7. I
Very
mean,
pure.
not even a question. I don't know why, I just love that game. It's just pure, unadulterated aggression. And I love that. I mean, there's very little information that you can gather. So it definitely is a game better played live. Not so much online, but it's just, it's also one of those games that, like, you're either gonna run out the stack, and actually have a shot, or you're just gonna be out, pretty early, and then you can move on and go play something else if it doesn't work
Nonsense.
out. So it's like, all right, we're either gonna do this, gonna try to a pure gamble, but still with a definite, significant amount of skill involved.
I like it. I like it. Okay, next one, rapid fire from Chica Bonita. Do you have a poker idol, KL, after whom you model your game? And if so, who is it? And have you met this person?
So I have poker people that I enjoy. But this is gonna sound super conceited. But I try not to mimic anyone's game. First of all, I think it's a good way to get stuck in a rut. And if you're not in poker, stagnation is equal to regression. So you're either improving or you're not improving, or you're going backwards. There is no like middle of the road, at least in my opinion. Variance can hide it to some extent, but eventually, if you're not trying to improve, you're going to get found out. And so I think that constantly doing things differently, questioning your assumptions, questioning why you're doing things or why you think something should be done a certain way is really the only way to get better. But having said all that, obviously, meeting legends of the game, or at least seeing them like in the hallways, is always a thrill, regardless of how many times you've, passed them or whatever it is. Seeing, seeing Daniel, even though we are somewhat communicative, whereas, as busy as he is, seeing him is still always exciting.
It never gets old.
Especially when he buys your action and owes you money. That's always fun. So
That's for sure.
That's always fun. But I mentioned I got to play David Benjamin. That was so much fun. He's just like an OG of poker.
Yep.
It's super quiet, super understated. Being at the final table when Lang was at the final table in the PPC, and Jungle was there. I mean, there's so many people there that were, Ellie was there.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure, of course.
so it was, it was like, oh my God. But I didn't holler at Elliot. I went, hey, good luck. And I didn't, obviously. But I mean, that's exciting stuff.
Good stuff. About studying Chica Bonita, I mean, obviously there's plenty of study that you do. Chica Bonita wants to know, do you also read poker books? And if so, do you have any that you'd recommend to anyone?
Yeah, so if you're into that series, definitely go on these books.
Okay.
I'm generally not a book person. I much prefer video or coaching. It's just how my brain works. I need to absorb it via seeing it and talking about it. But there's all sorts of really good stuff out there. GTO, I can't recommend Modern Poker Theory enough. Michael Acevedo's
Sure.
book. Yes,
His
it
Bible.
looks like exactly. I mean, yeah, it looks like a textbook, and it can be intimidating. I fully understand that, but it's worth it if you're willing to put in the effort and the time. You will have such a deeper understanding of the game for a little bit more accessible from an ease of use. Andrew Brokos's
Okay.
GTO book is also very good. Um, I'm friends with Michael. I'm friends with Andrew as well. I'm good friends with both. So I want to make sure I mention both of them
There you go.
because they're both very good books. In fact, you know what? Buy them both. They're
There you
good.
go.
um,
I like it.
and then for
Okay.
mindset stuff,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I think it's important. Mindset stuff. Primed Mind is honestly worth 10 times what they charge. It is so valuable. I know that people are going to be like, oh, meditation, that's not for me, that's voodoo. It really, I felt the same way. I swear to God, I did. I thought it was a bunch of baloney, but it does work. It evens you out. It helps you understand the bigger picture a lot better, and it's a necessary thing that every serious poker player should invest in their mental game. So
I
whether it's
will.
with them or whoever.
That's prime mine, and I will use that opportunity. Obviously, a collaboration between Fedor the Wonderkind Holtz, who was episode 40, and Elliot Rowe, who was episode 20. So we'll just get those last bit ones in there. We got one more question from Chica Bonita, and then one more question asked her, and then we will wrap it up. Folks, thanks so much for listening. This has just been one of the most enjoyable, lengthy, but also just eye-opening and fascinating, phenomenal journeys of an episode. So thank you very much, KL. Chica Benita, one more from her. What hobbies do you enjoy? I love this, besides poker.
So my content production background, I love film. Film is a big part of who I was growing up, producing it, making films and being involved in the productions of other people's films. So that's something that I really, really enjoy. I'm not like super snobbish about it. Like I don't get into like the French avant-garde art house stuff. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not that snobbish, but I do think there's some good stuff everywhere you look. And then I don't really, I mentioned, I don't really do books or poker, but I do love some good fantasy novels. Been reading Neil Gaiman lately, which, obviously he has some of his stuff that's going into production on TV. So I really love that. And I love me some political spy thrillers.
Awesome.
So I've been watching Homeland recently,
Good.
which
That's a great one.
it's actually inspired by originally an Israeli show
Yes,
itself.
sir.
So I'm
Lior
actually
Raz, I
going.
believe, was the producer of the original. Yeah, sure.
And I'm actually going to when I finish Homeland. I'm going to watch the original, the Israeli show as well.
There you go.
So I'm very excited about that.
Good. You just earned some extra points with this interviewer. I will tell you that. Gotta support the homeland. That's where I live. Last question, asker. Acid Burn FX always asks the most creative, interesting, wonderful questions. That's a good notes to end off on here, KL. Acid Burn FX wants to know, what are you most grateful for?
really tough because I had a lot to be grateful about. Um, wow, that is a super good question. I feel like you just like Googled, how do I make tail speechless? And because very rarely am I.
If you'd like, we can give you a time bank on this one.
Listen, I need to use one of my time extensions.
Yeah.
I guess as I think about it, everything that I'm grateful for stems back to my family being so dedicated to making sure that like my life is and has been as close to normal and full as possible. Because there's been a lot of sacrifices that had been made. And I didn't mention this at the beginning, but when we were talking about my diagnosis, I wasn't supposed to live past 3. And I'll be 33 this year. So that kind of is a testament to, obviously my parents and my family. I have a younger brother as well. Everyone, not to be dramatic, but keeping me alive. I mean, I'm not trying to over dramatize this, but more importantly, making things as kind of normal and like non, other, if you will. I was never other. I was just tail. One of, you know, one of 4 in my family and one of 230, whatever in my high school class. And, one of however many thousands at U of I. It was never, this like over the top thing. So yeah, I just think that because that is what has kept me grounded, um, in the psychological sense. That kept me from kind of having this, uh, this woe is me complex because that was never an option. Like you're fine. Like not you're fine. That's a bad way of putting it. This is fine. This will be fine. And what I always like to point out is, hey, the average lifespan is getting closer and closer to 100.
Yeah.
And if my average lifespan was supposed to be 3, that means by multiplication, I'm about 1100. Because, 33, 3, 100. I mean, I'm
You're big on that
indeed.
transitive property. I like it.
I really am. I really am.
That's very cool.
Listen, man, I do mental gymnastics because I can't do actual gymnastics. So,
well, that does lead into the next question from Acid Burn FX. What is the craziest thing that you have ever done, and would you do it again?
Wow, that's a really good question.
I told her she always asks the best one. Acid Burn FX.
So, I think the problem is I'm kind of like risk averse personally, but when I mentioned earlier we did a road trip out west when I was young, and this isn't something that like I was part of it, but it was just like something cool that we did. And I, basically best, and we're best friends. Like we're not like have that father son, situation. It's friend, best friend situation more than anything. Anyway, I was really young, and we stopped at the Hoover Dam because when you're American doing a road trip out west, you stop at the Hoover Dam. That's a thing you do.
Right.
And I was very small. I was young. I was like 6 or 7, but but I was physically very small. And so you could pick me up and basically do whatever you wanted to with me. And there is an overlook where you can look straight down and see like down into the dam. And it's a really cool thing, but I couldn't see it because my wheelchair wouldn't go up high enough. So my dad picks me up and he hooks me out over the rail so I can see it. And I'm looking down. I didn't think anything of it. I was in my dad's arms. I was totally
Wow.
safe. I was totally safe. You know,
Wow.
there's nothing that he put me in a situation where I could experience something that
Yeah.
nobody, that everybody else was experiencing, but I couldn't because of my wheelchair. And it was like, well, that's bullshit. Here, it's like you see it. And my mom was freaking out. Of course,
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
stand back over here. I don't know, just see it. Um,
wow.
but no, I mean that was not
That
something that
qualifies as craziest. I will certainly give you that.
and to answer the question, I would absolutely do it again
Whoa.
because it was a beautiful sight. It was a really cool view. Not because it was mountains or anything like that, but just to see that humans had built this gargantuan, massive thing that was holding back this force of nature.
Mhm.
I mean, that's mind-boggling
Yeah.
to me. That humans had built this thing that had been flowing that stopped something that had been flowing for you know millions of years,
Mhm.
and they were just like, no, we kind of want you to stop right here, and they just did it. Like that's super cool.
Well, we will end off with one final question, and I like this question to end off actually, because you seem also just so content, so happy, so grateful for so much. So it's almost like kind of flip it. If, and this is again a question from Acid Burn FX, if you could change one thing, not necessarily about yourself, but about the world, what would it be, KL?
Oh man, that's really good. So I guess it's cheating to say win every 70-30. Um, I mean,
Wishful thinking, but
it's a bit aggressive, probably. Um, I think the last, I'm not, I'm only 32, I'll be 33. So I'm old enough to like remember a time before. Um, and the before is kind of before the unwritten rules became pointless, basically. It used to be there were unwritten rules that you didn't do this, or you didn't say that, or you were a decent human being. And I think that anonymity behind social media accounts and distance, obviously the pandemic has probably exacerbated it a little bit because of distance. But I feel like people have kind of forgotten that there's unwritten rules of society around decency and acceptance and just like not being an asshole, if you will. Um, to be blunt about it, I guess it would be kind of like making it to where those were actually things that people didn't just like remember exist, to actually remember to adhere to them. There's it doesn't seem like, here's a way to put it. I wish people experienced shame the way they used to. There isn't shame anymore. There's no repercussions for saying something truly awful to someone because you can say it anonymously. You can say it behind an avatar and a screen name that isn't tied to you directly. And so you don't feel shame for doing this objectively awful thing. And because of that, you become numb to it, and it becomes normal. And like, oh, well, everybody does, does this, but everybody doesn't do that. So I guess that'll be the one thing. It's kind of deep, and maybe a little bit deeper than was intended. But I don't mean it in a negative way, like everyone should feel shame. I mean, people should have a conscience about the things that they do, I guess, is the best way to put it.
You say about going deep, and part of me is like, okay, well, I've got a function now as a host to just tie things up. But I got to tell you, KL, when we sign off this call, I guarantee you that answer that you gave, as good as the question was, the answer was just phenomenal. And that's certainly something I will be thinking of, and definitely an amazing note on which to end this episode. I want to thank everyone who sent in questions for KL Cleeton. And again, just a friendly reminder to all of you out there in the CardsChat community, we would love to see you submit your questions for our future podcast guests in the dedicated thread on the forums. And folks, if you like the show, please be sure to give us a good review on iTunes and spread the word via your social media channels. KL, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to share with the CardsChat community?
No, I'm a really big fan of the community in general, Ryan. That's told me so much. I got to meet a few of the CardsChat folks when I was out there in October and November. Everyone is just so amazing, so welcoming. You guys have an amazing community that you built. Your social media is always on point and amazing. And I certainly appreciate that, being a social media snob myself. So congratulations on that, and thank you for having me on and letting me blather on for such a long time. I hope that the folks out there are staying safe, healthy, and I hope I get to see you all in June and July.
Be amazing. And you say you're talking a lot on social media. You can follow you at
High Hands 89, I'm sorry, HIGHANDS. So High Hands 89 on Twitter. And that's the main one. I have an Instagram, but I honestly don't know how to use it. And
I don't either. I don't do Instagram.
Screw Facebook anyway, right? But no, hit me up. I'm always happy to answer questions or talk about poker or anything. Hit me up.
Awesome. And again, KL, this has just been a phenomenal journey that I got to say I've really, really, really enjoyed. Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in once again to another episode of CardsChat. I'm Robbie Strazynski. You can follow me on Twitter at CardPlayerLife, and I wish you all a wonderful day.